So hi everyone, my name is Dexter Tillier. I'm the lead analyst at EIU, and we're going to be talking just before lunch about basically Web3 and talent. So we've got two companies, Deloitte and Brand Labs 360, which are partnering with each other to basically discuss that and to do things in terms of how do you bring a talent to Web3. So before we kind of go into the talent bit, I kind of want to ask you, what exactly do you mean by Web3? Because obviously you've got your fields of play, which I think are very relevant, and that's what you're looking into. So if you want maybe to discuss that a bit to start the conversation.
Sure. So thank you all for being here. And I had a skirt on, so they got a chair for me. We at Deloitte, we're sort of in the early days of starting to build this capability. So as a partner, I sit in Deloitte Digital, and we felt like from sort of the sentiment in the market that Web3 was starting to feel really ambiguous to not only our clients, but also to our talent, and that most of this was just around gamification. So we needed to demystify it by really starting to anchor it into how we do business, but really thinking about more of this experience economy that we live in. So what's the switch from information economy to digital economy to an experience economy, and how hyper dynamic that is. So we've created initially 4 fields of play. The first is called cross-reality experience economy. And this, for us, is the future of consumer experience. This is where you would see things like virtual commerce, where you would see loyalty, where you would see sort of experiences where brands are creating festivals and activities around their brand, and then also being able to accelerate engagement. So what does consumer or customer engagement look like? The second one is called augmented workforce experience. And so this has to do with like training and learning, sort of next best actions, really thinking about how to do these things at scale virtually, but really using the exponential and sort of the infinite and unlimited capacity of Web3 to be able to reach audiences in ways that we haven't been able to before. The other is the industrial metaverse. We call that enterprise simulation. So if you think about digital twin in 3D, that is one of our fields of play. So that is more indigenous to manufacturing, operations, movements. Even I'm a consumer retail partner, so we have a lot of our clients that are looking at store movements. You're able to predict and forecast capacity planning in ways that they cannot do in a very finite sort of 2D world. And then the last is trust. So if you think about, from a values perspective, we really believe in a responsible metaverse. So things around IP and privacy. And unfortunately, you have to think about how people could actually not use this technology for good. It is really important for us to think about inclusiveness. So how might we, as we continue to scale these new technologies, not create a wider digital divide than exists today? How do we, like Deloitte, actually use our access to be able to provide sort of our means to capital to those that may be underrepresented, and to also make sure that as someone like me, as I'm using the technology, that it doesn't have biases towards my existence. So those are our fields of play that sort of shape our offering and how we either work with partners like Brand Lab, or how we actually bring our clients and employees to that work.
Yes, and so then looking more maybe in terms of the talent across those fields of play, what do you think is the most important? Obviously you've got technical skills, which are very important, but not only technical skills. You've also got like human softer skill. Is it a combination of both? Is there a percentage? Is it just depending on the individual? What's the best way to look at it?
I think it's really nuanced, because gaming developers now these days are like rock stars. Everyone wants them. And whereas perhaps before people were hired for kind of some linear binary skills, now they have to be entrepreneurial, because there's still perhaps half the world who believe that the way we will all consume the internet in the future, or the near future, is via Web3 and the metaverse, and there's still the other half who doesn't. So I think rather than just employing network architecture engineers to create something, they also have to have kind of the entrepreneurial spirit as well, to believe that this is something that's changing the world.
And now when you're partnering with each other, how do you make sure you're bringing those skills into your new employees and your kind of new fields of play? What's the kind of the process? Maybe Lisa, you want to start with that?
Mm-hmm. I think that starting with choice, we do believe that as we continue to introduce new capability into our business, it is a way to not only attract new talent, but retain new talent. And because we used to just do big platform work, we had these sort of like back office, front office ways of thinking about our technology talent. And the metaverse has really given us a means to sort of merge up more human-centered skills. So being able to understand empathy in ways that maybe our UX and UI designers haven't really thought of before, because there's a new experience that you're bringing forward. Or things like a virtual commerce where we actually have clients now saying, hey, we want to trade in the metaverse. So what does that sort of new platform experience looks like? I think it's really just talking to our talent and sort of laying their existing profile against that and then asking them where do they want to actually be curious about their skill sets, where do they think they have some strengths, but where could they also use it to grow. And then, our partnership with Brand Lab 360, we also are trying to look at like skills we want in-house versus those that we may not continue to invest in. So we need partners to work with us to either help us sort of upskill our teams or actually provide that sort of strategic capability or augmentation to our delivery model.
And I mean, you mentioned in-house, outside of the house, anything else. There's been a lot of discussion, or I've had a lot of questions in my job, just after all the tech companies starting firing a lot of people, whether those skills were going to go into non-tech sector. So from your perspective, is it better to try to keep those things in-house and to kind of hire employees, or to try to do that training maybe outside and kind of getting employees already ready? And I guess, following up on that, is there a role for the broader educational system? So should we look at secondary school, university, also in terms of bringing a base level of skills? What is kind of the best balance between, I guess, those three elements? Dan, if you want to start on that.
Yeah, we started in the fashion industry building software for fashion where relationships and empathy and all those things are really important. I can remember going to our development team and saying, one of our competitive advantages is that we render CGI level graphics but run in a web browser, because the fashion industry didn't want headsets or apps or devices. They wanted to be able to access the internet or these experiences as they normally do. And it was about the why with our team. So we're asking you to deliver some complex server architecture, but why? The reason is in the fashion industry, relationships are really important. The relationship between a kind of brand rep and a buyer. So we're designing this so unlimited people can be in these experiences. So for us, we already had that because, fashion employees are generally relationship people. And I think for us, it's the fusion of that then this is so live, isn't it? So agile, and how we complement that. So I think upskilling our existing staff was the start of it. But again, it's finding people who can do the jobs, but have, I agree with Lisa, the empathy and the emotional intelligence really to understand why we're building what we're building.
And Lisa, what's your kind of view on that? Is it in-house, outside of house, or important is the education system in terms of bringing at least to a certain level people with a certain level of skills before they kind of enter the work and working environment?
So we believe that we make impact through our people, and our talent will always want to do the most interesting work, which will be as close as possible to the end user. And so we try to segment the work, the delivery work, into sort of what is customer facing or consumer facing, or what might be some of these sort of run type roles that we have an engineer that just wants to sort of turn the wrench on. And then that helps us sort of decide if it's something we want to keep in-house or not, and sort of invest in with all the overhead that goes with it. Or if we want it to be outsourced, we think about delivery centers. We have a lot of delivery centers ourselves that we actually start to call capability centers, where we can get acceleration. But I think for us, it's really more thinking about as close as possible to the end user and being very experience-led, which is important. So designing differently, being able to tell stories. In the metaverse, you have this infinite space that you're working with, so the imagination and creativity is being tested differently than sort of these sort of finite and constrained ways that we had been deploying technology before. So there is a different skill set that we need our teams to either go get or we need to attract a different one where you're almost telling stories through this new engagement model, and also the ability to let people know that this is not a one-size-fits-all. That sort of matches then the right talent with sort of the right work that we're trying to get after.
Yes, I mean, consumer above everything else, and obviously not everybody
Yeah,
can do the same
exactly.
thing. I want maybe to kind of finish up, because we've got 4 minutes left, and we talk a bit more about your partnership and what you've been doing in terms of tangible example of what your two companies have been doing. So maybe if I start with you, Dan, can you give us an example in terms of how you've been working with Deloitte and what you've been doing and how you've helped them out?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure how much we can say in terms of customers, but what's really exciting about our partnership is that if we as a company generally deliver a project for a blue chip client, I mean, we work with the likes of Estee Lauder and Warner Brothers and Harley Davidson. As mentioned earlier, we've got kind of the engine that powers these experiences, but then because it's so new, we tend to do the creative bit as well in partnership with the client. The thing I really love about our partnership is that Deloitte have got some of the brightest talent in technically, creatively in the industry, and it kind of works really well because it can scale quicker because we can provide the underlying technology that runs the experiences, but the guys at Deloitte can build them. And like Lisa said, there's an element of upskill in there as well, so we can work together. And I think talking about the metaverse as a whole, that's really important, isn't it? You know, all these interconnected worlds, so the ecosystem has to fuse together. So I think we're a good example of that in terms of joining forces to create some really special client outcomes.
And what about you, Lisa? What's your perspective on the partnership?
I mean, right, so Dan and his team are very people-centric, and so are we. So it's really important to have partners that can stay agile with you. You know, I can think about, you know, I'll just call Dan and be like, hey, can you do a demo? We need to show, you know, a client something. He has way more acceleration and sort of capability than we can sort of like get a team spun up and deliver. So there's something really special about sort of not only the acceleration, but really sort of the quality and capability that he has that can bring that value with us. We're quite seamless. So as we're representing out, we're one team. And I think it takes a special partner to be able to demonstrate that you can integrate at sort of no trade-off of how you're actually delivering. And then it's back to our people. I think one of the first things that Dan and I had talked about, which was more of, you know, we're going to do some hackathons. He immediately was like, hey, I can have your teams work with my team. So I think those types of partnerships around talent and upskilling and making sure we are exposing, you know, this capability to the future generation is what's really special about the partnership.
I have to say, I quite like the fact you're focusing on people, because sometimes when we do tech conferences, it's all about the tech and far less about the people, but it's still quite important. We've got 90 seconds to go, so if anybody has a question, please raise your hand. Come on, somebody must be brave enough. Otherwise, I'll ask a final question. We've got a lady over there.
Hiya, my name's Hannah and I'm from the Fashion Retail Academy and I'm studying there. I think for me personally, I feel like there's not enough information on what the next jobs are, and especially for like my generation being Gen Z and like in between millennial. Like, I feel like there isn't enough information. Do you think that information will come for the younger generations and we've kind of like missed that bit, or where's it kind of going? Because obviously it's very like early adapters.
You can go.
Okay. That's an interesting question, really. I've never thought about that. But the Web3 and the metaverse is live, isn't it? It's all happening really, really quickly, and it's evolving really quickly. And so are roles. I think, you know, if you think of video gaming as a tech stack, has always been modular within its own industry, and now all of a sudden it's being transitioned across to power everything we do online. I think it will come, but it is a good question. Sometimes even in our organisation, we don't even know what our roles are on a day-to-day basis because it's so fast-moving. But I think as everything settles down and this transition from Web 2 to Web 3 becomes the way we all access the internet, it'll become quite clear then. And I think, by the way, that'll happen way sooner than the general consensus.
Lisa, if you have something very quickly.
I think continuing to have them at places like this, like we need to sort of be very explicit about what those job profiles are and work with, like the HR teams to really help them understand how there's a lot of sort of cross-transferable knowledge, or people that are in business roles. Like, I think people think everyone that's in Web3 needs to have this amazing technology background, and that's not the case. Some of our strongest designers actually have never been a technologist before. So I think it's our jobs to sort of help translate either the modernization of those existing roles, or to say these are the new names that we need to apply against these types of roles there. So just keep asking the question and holding sort of the community accountable for being explicit about that.
Well, with that, thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you very much,
so
Dan.
much.
Thank you very much, everyone.